I was in my early 20s when I moved out of my parents' home. I moved into a one-bed property situated at the top of a small apartment block. It felt good to finally have my own place, and the first couple of days were great. But then I started to notice things. Just little things like the TV remote not being in the same place where I left it, or a light being on when I returned home from work, which I could have sworn I turned off before I left. And even food I thought I brought was no longer there in the cupboards. I wasn't really a believer in ghosts or the paranormal, but I was beginning to wonder. So I knocked on my neighbour's door, who lived across the hall, and asked about who used to live in the apartment before I did. The elderly woman told me a young man and his girlfriend used to live there, but the woman died, possibly due to drugs. She said the man was always in trouble with the police and behind on his rent before he was finally evicted. I thanked the woman and returned to my apartment, thinking I'm either going mad or the girlfriend of the man who used to live there was haunting the place. That very night I was awoken from my sleep by a sound in my room. I sat up in bed and looked into the darkness, where I thought I could see a tall shadowy figure. I reached out for my glasses and put them on, but I couldn't see anyone. I got out of bed and turned on all the lights in every room, but there was no one there in the apartment but me. I turned off all the lights again and got back into bed, but it wasn't long before I heard another noise, like somebody moving around. This time the sound was coming from above me. Being on the top floor, it had to be from the attic space. The attic was in the hallway and had one of those cords you pull on to release some steps all in one simple action. I had no cause to go into the attic until then. I climbed the steps and shone my torch into the darkness. I slowly moved the light from side to side, then had the shock of my life. Near the back wall was the figure of a man. He was just standing there, staring right at me. What the? But before I could finish my sentence, the man rushed at me, screaming like a madman. He was big and tall and knocked me straight to the ground before he rushed down the attic steps. I sat up for a second, trying to take in what just happened, then cautiously went down the attic steps. The front door was wide open. I checked the rest of the apartment, but the man was nowhere to be seen. When I checked the attic again, I found a sleeping bag, and next to it were empty food wrappers and tins. The man was probably the previous tenant and had been living in my attic all this time. I had the locks changed the next day, and thankfully never saw or heard of him ever again. I was watching a late night movie on TV when I became aware of a moving shadow outside behind the living room window. I was 18 years old and home alone. My parents had gone away for the weekend, leaving me in charge of the house. I turned off the TV and the table lamp and walked across the room in darkness. I tried to listen for any sounds, but I couldn't hear anything. My heart was beating fast as I looked through a small gap in the curtains into the darkness of the garden outside. But just as I did, there was a knock at the front door. I froze to the spot. It was close to midnight. Who would be calling at the house this time of night? The door knocked again. I walked to the edge of the hallway and could see the door handle being turned. I felt scared, but relieved that I had remembered to lock it earlier. I walked slowly towards the door as the handle was being repeatedly turned, but before I reached the door, it stopped. I leant my head forwards and looked through the peephole, but I couldn't see anyone, just an empty driveway. Then in a flash, out of nowhere, a man's face jumped right in front of the peephole. I jolted my head back from the door in alarm before a man's voice spoke. "Can you help me? My car's broke down. I've left my cell phone at home." I stood in silence, unsure whether to say anything. Then the man spoke again. "I know you're in there. Come on, just open the door. I'm stranded out here." I don't know why, but my hand started to reach out for the handle. I was just about to turn the key when the man began beating hard on the door. "Open the damn door before I break it down." "I've rang the police," I shouted. "They'll be here any minute." It went silent. Then I heard footsteps walking away down the driveway. I rushed to the window and could see a man get into a parked car a little further down the street and drive away. I immediately rang my parents, who rang the police. It was a long time before I was left alone again in charge of the house. I was house sitting for my brother, who had gone away on holiday with his girlfriend. I was 18 and still living with my parents, so I thought it would give me a bit of freedom to have a whole house to myself for a week. On the first night, I stayed up late playing video games. It was about 1 AM when I decided to call it a night and go to bed. I was upstairs in the bedroom, just about to get undressed, when I heard the sound of smashing glass. I walked quietly to the top of the stairs and looked down into the darkness. I could hear someone moving around. Then the sound of a low voice came from the foot of the stairs. I carefully stepped backwards to the bathroom and quietly locked the door. I checked my pockets for my phone, but had left it downstairs. Then I heard the stairs creaking and began to feel sick with fear. I stood with my ear pressed against the bathroom door, where I could hear the sound of someone moving around, rummaging, searching through cupboards and drawers. Then the bathroom door handle turned. I jumped back in alarm from the door as someone tried to push it open. I stood in silence, frozen to the spot. On the other side of the door, it went quiet too. Minutes later, a piece of paper was pushed under the door. It read, "Leave this room before sunrise and you die." My heart was racing. I was the most scared I'd ever felt in my entire life. I must have spent another hour in the bathroom, silently listening for any sounds of movement before I plucked up the courage to climb out of the window. I ran all the way to my parents' home, who lived 20 minutes away. When I got there, I told them everything and they rang the police. My brother's house had been burgled.